What is going on YouTube? Carter here. Got another video for you. This is going to be on a mystery Chinese knife. Well, it's not a complete mystery, but it does fall into the category that we've been seeing a lot lately, and that is these hard to pinpoint knives. Where do they come from? Who makes them? Is it a legitimate brand? Is this something you can get behind? So this is a completely Chinese-made knife. They are stamped with a CH. They're being sold as CH knives. There's about four or five models, this being one of them that I've seen so far. This one being the coolest one and the one that I'm most interested in. I showed this off on my Instagram page and it got quite a lot of attention. So I figured I would do a video on it in case you're interested. I got this right from China, so this is not available from US dealers, although I think you can pick it up off of eBay from US distributors. So let's get some specifications out of the way before we start talking about this knife a little bit more. Has a 3.5-inch blade, roughly, or pretty much exactly 3.5-inch blade. About 8.25 inches overall, maybe 8.5, somewhere around there. So kind of that perfect, very popular size, you know, not too big, not too small, that kind of thing. It is a titanium frame lock flipper. As you can see, there is no other deployment method. You can only flip it open, and it flips extremely well. But before we do that, let's talk about the blade. This comes in an S35VN. You can see the model number right there, CH3504. Should also be in the title of the video, S35VN. Now, this retails direct from China for around $85. It also comes in an 8CR 18 MOV steel for less money. And it looks like all the other models by this brand come in the lesser steel. I haven't seen any other knives come in the S35VN. Taking that with a grain of salt, however, due to the recent knives that have been coming in from China, Riot knives, Kaiser, stuff like that, I'm taking it with a lot less salt than I used to take it with, if that makes sense. I'm starting to trust some of these specs and steel and things like that coming out of these knives more so now than I did in the past. So S35VN steel, you can see it's almost a fully flat ground blade, just has a little swedge on top. Stone-washed finish. Let's see if we can get a close-up. If my phone wants to play nice, there we go. Stone-washed finish. You can see the model number there. Kind of an interesting pivot. That's actually two different materials laid into each other. I'm not sure if the black material is some kind of steel, aluminum, titanium, plastic. I'm not quite sure, can't figure it out. But the metal-looking part is inlaid into that black part. Same with both sides right there. Titanium frame lock flipper, as I mentioned before. It is contoured, as you can see right there. One thing that is very cool about this knife, other than the obvious skull right here that got the most attention on my Instagram page, is this has 3 different finishes on the face here. So you have the mill lines you can see right here, anodized, kind of this teal aqua blue type color. Then you have the milled out portion that makes the dark parts of the skull, which is blasted and anodized a purplish, dark purplish type color. And then the flats here, which is just raw titanium, actually has an orange peel texture. I'm not sure if that's coming across in the video, but it has 3 different textures. You can see the really nice work that's done on this knife. It is absolutely splendid. If this was a US-made knife from Strider or something like that, some mid-tech, I would picture this to be a $600 or $700 knife as a mid-tech, just based off of the sweet milling work, the multi textures going on, the titanium here. Very, very cool. Flipper right here, nice up-pointed design, skeletonized, titanium backspacer. Also anodized the teal color with a satin finish. You can see how it's been polished. Lanyard hole right here. On the back we have a 3D milled titanium clip. Works very well. Lock bar right here. Steel insert in the lock bar with an over travel built in on the lock bar. You can see how well it flips, just stupendously. Let's do a broken detent test. So if we break the detent, so before the detent fits in, let's see if we can actually do this on camera. Flip it open. Yep, you can flip this open without even using the detent. It takes some skill and some practice, but you can do it. So it's that smooth. You can see just how it falls shut with a little bit of shaking. Of course, that's once the detent's broken. Falls shut. It is rock solid. There's no play, no movement, up, down, left, right. Lockup is nice and early. So basically what I'm getting at, guys, is from a technical standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, in terms of making a titanium ball bearing. Oh yeah, ceramic ball bearings in the pivot and a ceramic ball bearing for the detent. So in terms of making a ceramic ball bearing flipper titanium frame lock, this thing is 100% perfect. You can see the detent holds the blade right in place and it flies open. Super smooth. One of the smoother flippers that I have in my collection, actually. This and my Kaiser Dorado, which you haven't seen yet, is probably my smoothest knives. And of course, that's smooth without play. Although I did get a ZT0550 that is amazingly smooth. It's not a flipper, however, no ball bearings, so that's why it's so amazing. Lock bar geometry is done perfectly. You can see right there. So overall, from a technical standpoint, this thing is just rock solid. I mean, everything's done correctly. Everything's done right. All the geometry, all the engineering is done perfectly well on this knife. It's really, really cool. So what are we looking at here? What is this knife? Well, it's basically a Tim Britton model that is, I hate it when this happens. Like, it's dribbled out of my brain. The model that Kaiser kind of copied, quote unquote, had license to do, quote unquote. Somebody's at fault, and there's a billion different stories as to what happened. But that model, the Tim Britton model that Kaiser used in their knives, the profile of this knife is that exact model. If you look it up, especially the handle, I mean, it is exactly the same as that Tim Britton or Brighton. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I'm sorry about that. It's the exact profile of that knife. But this has, instead of that kind of 3/4 hollow ground dagger point thing that's on his knife, this is more of an almost full flat ground blade, as I mentioned before, with a stonewash finish. Looks a lot nicer, I think, than his particular knife. So the profile of it is the same as that. However, his knife, as far as I know, all of his knives had some sort of 3D sculpting on it and things like that. This does not have that. The actual aesthetics of this knife is closer to a Shirogorov knife, particularly the clip here. The lanyard hole is very Shiro inspired. So you have a Tim Britton overall knife shape, Shirogorov accents, and then kind of its own thing. I mean, everything else is kind of pretty unique to it. I guess you could say that the milling work here is similar to some stuff you've seen from custom makers and stuff, but not quite like this. That skull is really cool. A lot of people said it looked like Terminator 2 or just Terminator in general, the exoskeleton type look to it, which I would agree with. It does look pretty similar to that, but overall it's, and it's one of those things where you could look at this knife and you could scream that it's stealing from other makers and things like that. It definitely kind of toes the line, particularly with the Tim Brighton silhouette of the knife is so similar. But, when you're talking, hey, I'm going to make a titanium frame lock flipper, medium-sized flipper, it's kind of hard not to have things that are inspired by or similar to other knives. And this one definitely takes some of the better points on some of the knives out there and kind of utilizes similar or very close themes in its own knife to kind of make something very cool and very unique. I'm not all that interested in the other CH knives. One part being that I'm always kind of feel a little icky buying knives like this. This isn't a direct copy, ripoff, or clone. However, the suspicion that this is coming from either the same factory or the same makers as some of those others is always there, and I always just feel kind of icky getting a knife like this. And actually, after I bought it, I had a lot of regrets about buying it until I actually got it and saw how well this thing is made, how well it flips. It really is. I mean, to be honest, aside from the fact that it's coming from China, kind of from the black depths of China, so to speak, aside from that, it is a stupendous knife, and the quality of this thing is really outstanding. And even if you get down into just the bevel, if we can get a focus here, even that bevel, secondary bevel, you can see how even and how perfect it is on both sides. And since I've been sharpening a lot more with my KMS system, I'm starting to notice sharpening grinds on every knife that I get, how even they are, how well they're done. And to me, I'm not a big fan, I'm getting off on a tangent here, I'm not a big fan of mirror polished edges, but I do like uniform edges, consistent edges. I actually like to see the grain, grind grain on my edges, and I like them to be consistent, similar to what this is. So that definitely caught my eye on this knife as well. It is just really well done. Very nice knife. So if you come across one and you're skeptical about whether or not you're going to get a well-made knife, rest assured you are definitely going to get a very well-made knife with top quality materials, top quality everything. Oh yeah, no slop in the detent in the closed position. You know how that's a pet peeve of mine. This does not have that. Very well done. Now, definitely not a lot of people's cup of tea coming from China the way it does, without kind of a known presence like Riot and Kaiser, but very cool nonetheless. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Here is a look at the I forget the model number, CH3504 titanium frame lock flipper. All right, guys, I'm out.